Fix TF2, it's like the sinking of the Lusitania, except not at all. For those of you who are unaware of the recent happenings in Team Fortress 2, there was a big protest over Valve's ignorance of and seeming abandonment of the game for the last 6 or 7 years, despite it retaining a large player base and still receiving cosmetics that you could buy, which included a petition as the central focus of the movement, and unlike every other petition on Earth, it seems to have actually worked, or at the very least was extremely conveniently timed right next to Valve doing exactly what was outlined within the petition goals and nothing else, which would be a very interesting and specific coincidence. Either way, Valve actually fulfilled the demands of the petitioners to the letter, stunning the entire community, which at that point consisted of 7 YouTubers, me, 150 Redditors who were on the verge of blowing their own hands off out of boredom, Bartholomew, our talking peanut mascot, and a PS1 era barrel asset. Now you might think that given the Team Fortress 2 community got quite literally exactly what they wanted and have been relentlessly talking about for 7 years straight, they might finally come together for a whole minute and 30 seconds to celebrate and be merry. Or they could trample over each other down the giant bleeding, screaming tunnel that makes us all get illogically angry over stupid minutia and bicker over a fucking piece of paper that never advertised itself as anything but a piece of paper. Which one do you think we'll take? So I decided that for today's video we would... Oh my god, I broke the video. Oh god. Okay, Bill, just put anything on the screen. Just put something on the screen to enter. There's this cool mobile game I've been playing recently in an effort to escape the drudgery of my real life, much too easy and very boring real job. And so far, it's been working out pretty well. The game is Raid Shadow Legends. You've probably heard of them. Raid is a fun, character-collecting, turn-based RPG with over 800 different shirtless, ripped, sword-wielding fantasy characters and cool monsters to collect, split up into a bunch of different factions with really cool character designs. My personal favorite faction is gotta be either the Orcs or the Knights Revenant, just cause I think they look cool, sue me. And Raid is currently running a massive event, their biggest one yet, called the Asgard Divine, an event styled around Norse mythology featuring 4 new champions, where you can get Loki the Trickster God as a login bonus after playing for a week between now and October 23rd. And you can beat the crap out of Odin in a new time dungeon, which is great because I need vengeance for that one time I called upon Asgard to give me strength unending, and Odin turned around to all the fallen warriors at the long table and said, "Chat, is this real?" and they all laughed at me. You can also play to get Freya, Thor, and even Odin himself, and I've personally been enjoying the PvP arenas and trying to figure out optimal builds for some of my characters, and seeing how far I can push characters of lower rarity like my starter Gallic. And if you start playing Raid today using my link in the description or the pinned comment, my link, and only my link, not his link, you will immediately get a huge starter pack with the epic champion Tagore from the Orc faction, who is wearing about 600 pounds of dead animals, is still somehow a healer, which is why we don't trust orcs with medicine. However, even I can't deny that Tagore is really good at playing the speed manipulator, with a short cooldown speed increase for your entire party, and he can dish out defensive auras to your most wounded party members, keeping them from getting blown up. And after level 15, you can pair Tagore up with the Grizzled Jarl, another hero that you'll be getting, whose basic attacks provide anti-healing debuffs, which are very valuable against certain bosses. You'll also be getting 5 mystery shards with which you can help beef up your roster and give the Jarl a retinue. And while you're at it, you should join my clan, Kaluka Fishing Limited, which is just a Raid Shadow Legends clan, and you do not need to involve the labor department in any kind of investigation. So join me in Raid Shadow Legends and let's collectively stab the Demon King in his eyes. Alright, let me just hoist this up. Alright guys, I fixed the video. Now, you think this'll buff out, right? Now, with that said, I do think there are some concerns about this movement that are very valid. I think it's absolutely possible, if not already true, that this movement, and more importantly, how the community at large is responding to it, is paying the wrong amount of attention to the wrong kinds of stuff. Like, guys, if you see somebody doing something horrible or stupid, something so outrageous that you absolutely have to tell somebody about it, maybe we should take a step back and analyze if this person is doing that thing just to try to get your goat, and we don't give them the attention that they clearly crave. I think it's also reasonable to be concerned about how Valve is going to respond to this whole thing. So far, I think Valve has done about 1,000 times more than anybody could have possibly predicted they would do, which was of course their job. Valve has a history of applying bad, hastily made quote-unquote solutions and half measures, assuming that they fixed the problem and then moving on for another 5 years. And while what they're doing so far looks fantastic, Valve also has an ironically consistent history of not committing to things. The old saying is true, don't count your chickens before they hatch, because if you do, the company that leased you your eggs will repossess your car. However, what's been more interesting to me has not been what people should have done in relation to the petition, or what people did. What's been more fascinating to me is the fact that the Team Fortress 2 Discourse engine was not prepared in any way for this to actually work. And the power vacuum that's been left behind in the space where talking about Team Fortress 2 and how Valve was ignoring it should have gone, which has opened up this like Pandora's box of some of the most obnoxious discourse I've seen from this community in quite a while. Because instead of talking about interesting topics like the Atlantean Civil War, or talking about the actually hard topics like grilling YouTubers on what they would do if they were hit in the head with a hammer chained to a rock and thrown into the ocean, but instead we're all too busy complaining about cosmetics. Again. And since I've had writer's block for a while now and have been watching this community collectively succumb to a fit of rabies, so I decided to say fuck it and just talk about a bunch of stuff. I have lost control of the video and I am going to crash it into a poll. Look. If you do not want to give Valve, or any company, your money because you are not satisfied with the quality or status of a product or service, be it Team Fortress 2 or otherwise, that is completely reasonable. In fact, we should probably all be spending less money on video game items than we currently are, especially since that money would be much better off being sacrificed as tribute to the stone, but also, if you think you're better than someone else, or that you're some kind of a fucking genius because you're not purchasing online game cosmetics that somebody else is, I hate to be the bearer of bad... Wait, no I don't, I love calling people stupid, yippee! But you might be kind of a fucking idiot. I think we should do a little math here. Shut up! I want you guys to go into the comments and tell me how much money you thought that the 2023 Winter Cosmetic case made for Valve. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to take a guess, and to help you think, I'll leave you with this cool frog that is definitely not a surveillance device. You done? Alright, chat, let's see what you guys wrote here. 7. No. Actually, the number is a surprisingly low $804,013.53. Now, this data was gathered by taking all of the existing items from the crate and then multiplying them by 2.49. I got the data for how many items there were from backpack.tf, and as such, there are some reasons I believe that the actual number is a little bit higher than this. Not substantially higher, but a little bit, because some items are unaccounted for. For example, some items were traded up, meaning that a small number of the lower value items are unaccounted for as they were used in those trade-ups. But there's not enough to suggest a substantial difference. Maybe the real number is like $825,000. And of course we have to account for the greedy cabal of workshoppers who are ruining our perfect game by putting things on a website. And the only way that we can stop these psychos is if we take 100,000 drums of oil and pour it into the Great Salt Lake. Workshoppers cumulatively receive 25% of all of the profits that a crate makes, according to a workshopper. And you know, Valve. Meaning that Valve only makes $602,261. Hey guys, time-traveling Kaluka here to give you a correction. When I made this part of the video, I forgot to account for some 4,100-ish keys that are just sitting in people's inventories and weren't used to unbox any crates. Apparently, workshoppers are paid after a key is purchased, not after it's used, meaning that the actual numbers are these ones. It's only a $10,000 difference total, but still, I have to correct the timeline here because if I don't, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and Douglas MacArthur is going to be the eternal ruler of the American Democratic Socialist Republic. Anyway, back to your video. $61 on a crate like this, and given that there's only 2 crate releases per year,
actually there are 3.
That just isn't as much money as I think a lot of people expected it to be. Now, of course, even though crates are a major earning period for Valve, there is always the Steam community market, which you would think is the major moneymaker for Valve, but actually their main moneymaker for Team Fortress 2 is the Cave Full of Nightmares. But again, I don't think that in relation to Team Fortress 2 items, that the Steam marketplace makes as much as people would like to believe. Now, figuring out exactly how much money is traded over the Steam marketplace over a given period of time is basically impossible. The only people who would have even close to an idea of how much that's worth would be the most dedicated of traders and Valve. But I decided to dip my toes in just a little bit so we can get an idea of what it is we're dealing with here. and I plotted out all of the key sales for the week of June 4th to June 11th of this year. I chose keys specifically because they are by far and away the most traded item on the Steam marketplace. Nothing comes even close. You might think ban-up tickets are a good contender for keys, not even remotely so. Valve is lucky to be making like $15 an hour on man-up tickets. So as such, I figured keys were the best thing to look at, and the total number of keys sold for every hour between June 4th and June 11th of this year is 147,017 Manco Store Crate keys, for which Valve takes a 15% commission because they are the developer of Team Fortress 2. That's how the Steam Marketplace works. It's 5% for Valve for all games, and then 10% to the developer, which in this case is also Valve. Now, of course, at what price these keys were traded at is fluctuating. Keys are always fluctuating at least a little bit, but on average, these keys were sold for about $2, so we'll just say $2.05 to be polite, meaning that within that 1 week, Valve made $45,207.72. And if Valve saw similar performance for each week of this year, which of course hasn't happened yet, but if they did, they would see about $2.3 million and some change from Team Fortress 2 key sales. Now, that's a lot of money. That's so much money that I think quite a few game developers, especially indie developers, could be given that much money and make their dream game. That's so much money that a famous TikToker might be willing to let you take a picture with them without their human disguise if you gave it to them. But it's not that much money to Valve. Let's be polite and say that Canadians are people, and say that the entire rest of the Steam marketplace for Team Fortress 2 cumulatively also makes $2.3 million a year, which I really don't think it does. But we'll just be nice to Team Fortress 2, that means that this game is making $5.8 million a year, which again is a lot of money. Let's assume that Valve is making as much money this year as they did before COVID, because COVID was a huge boon for them, which again is giving Team Fortress 2 a massive advantage. So assuming Valve makes $5.8 million a year on TF2, which I don't think they do, and they only make let's say $2 billion a year total, this means that Team Fortress 2 accounts for 11% of 1% of their yearly revenue. Look, I'm not saying it's not worth doing, okay? But the sentiment that this game is making like $100 million or whatever, or that boycotting Team Fortress 2 is some kind of strategy that Valve absolutely cannot ignore, and the only reason it wouldn't work is if other people didn't also boycott, is backwash drinking idiocy. Maybe Valve does care about the $5 or $6 million they get from TF2. After all, Valve is a well-organized company. They're not just going to ignore money, but this isn't an amount of money that Valve can't ignore. Acting like this is guaranteed to fix the game is foolish, and blaming the community for not doing it, even though you're the one asking other people to spend their money how you want, is not just foolish, it's also another step in the long line of things that this community seems to be willing to do before they just blame Valve. Valve are the ultimate authorities on what is to become of Team Fortress 2. Acting like the status of Team Fortress 2, regardless of how you feel about it, is anyone else's fault is dumb. And treating other members of your community, the people who are on your side of everything, like they're stupid because they have a differing appreciation of things or a different view on what Team Fortress 2 should become, especially while you're not doing anything to promote what you believe to be is the right way. Again, if you're not satisfied with what Valve is doing and you don't want to give them your money, fantastic. I just think that it's possible that there's a better solution than dividing the community over a matter of opinion. Other people aren't idiots just because they're not as upset with Valve as you are. They're idiots because they didn't purchase a Honey Badger defense system during Honey Badger Osmosis season. But you should take all of this with a tiny grain of salt. I understand that this is effectively perfect math, but still, a lot of things could be unrepresentative of the final results here. These are just an idea of what we're working with. And as much as I would love to sit around here and count all of the key sales for an entire year of this game, but I would much rather do something incredibly excessively violent and comical to myself. Oh my god, that's an ad. That's an ad falling out of the sky. Everybody get away. Everybody back up. Wow, I can't believe
the company you just saw
would do that. I can't believe
the company you just saw
would just let one of their advertisements just completely fall out of the sky right onto that apartment building / zoo, killing 35 people and 19 tigers. Yep. This is a very difficult topic for us to talk about, isn't it? I mean, I can't believe it, guys. Valve is making a new game called Deadlock. And while other communities might be content to ask stupid questions like, is it enjoyable? Do I want to play it? And is it fun? Team Fortress 2 players are going to ask the hard-hitting questions, such as, what does this mean for Team Fortress 2? It means you need to shut the fuck up. You are embarrassing and deluding yourself if you think that Team Fortress 2 is in competition with Deadlock. Team Fortress 2 is not even on the same baseball team as my uncle, let alone the same astral plane as Deadlock. There are very few valid opinions to have about Deadlock right now. You can say either that you like it, that you do not like it, or that you are maybe a little concerned that Valve has a history of abandoning projects and is now making a new thing to abandon. These are valid concerns to have. But if you're comparing these two games, or you're concerned about the impact that Deadlock will have on TF2's future with Valve, I just don't think you should worry, because I have a weird suspicion that maybe it's not Deadlock that's the reason that Valve doesn't care, but also, after Deadlock is finished, they'll probably totally take all of the developers that were working on it and give some of them to Team Fortress 2, just like CS2, Half-Life Alyx, and the Steam Deck. They actually believe this. This is not only useless, but also counterproductive, because you could be arguing about something valuable, or doing something more valuable, like helping new players get into the game, finding community servers that you like and sharing that information around, or just being a good Team Fortress player. You could spend your entire weekend talking about Scout's advanced case of gingivitis, and it would be more valuable than howling at the moon about a game that does not care about us. Was the quote-unquote fight we quote-unquote had with quote-unquote Overwatch not embarrassing enough? We really gotta make ourselves look stupid a third fucking time? Now, this one here is a bit more of a niche topic, so I don't really mind if you guys skip or whatever, but I want to talk about this really weird phenomenon I've seen where people criticize new taunts made in the workshop by saying that they are emotes and not taunts. Now, at first I wasn't gonna bring this up because it's a small topic and I try to keep these videos from getting too long, but then the Buddha of Enlightenment told me that I should reconsider, so I've decided to go into it. This is possibly one of the stupidest, and also not just stupidest, but I don't know how else to say this, most touristy opinions I think I've ever heard. I shouldn't have to explain this to people who play the game, but the taunting part of a taunt is not the animation itself. It's the fact that when you get emoted on, Valve takes a picture of you and photoshops it heavily to make you look dumber and smellier, and then posts it on all of their social media. And also, it's the act of taunting that makes it taunting. It's the fact that when you taunt, you cannot defend yourself, so that when the enemy's kill cam zooms in on you, you are quite literally saying, haha, I got you, and I got you so bad that I can go through this entire animation and you can't stop me, and your team is so bad that they can't stop me. It is literally doing a neener in their face. The content of the emote is basically irrelevant. It's the fact that you're doing it that makes people upset. And many taunts that are apparently the big toxic taunts that people want are also not necessarily taunts depending on the context. Much like how many things that you wouldn't say are taunts can be taunts depending on the context. Dancing normally isn't a particularly taunting or aggravating thing to see, but when someone starts dancing after killing you, like they're dancing on your body, suddenly that is a much more legitimate taunt. Again, because the context matters. If you do it after you kill someone, it's a taunt, because it's the act of emoting that makes it taunting. And that context, again, really does matter, because if you just taunt at nobody, no one's going to get upset. Unless you encounter the most mentally unstable person on Earth, even the most toxic taunts in the game without some kind of engagement aren't going to piss anyone off. Again, the thing you're taunting them over is the fact that they got killed in the video game. I also find the entire concept of this argument kind of strange. Like, so what if something is a taunt? This is a game I'm constantly told needs to be more casual and to ignore the competitive side of its community, and the non-verbal communication of Team Fortress 2 is something that is, like, incredibly integral to its community. But I guess now this is somehow a bad thing. Even though, again, whether or not something is a taunt is depending on how you use it. Schadenfreude was animated specifically to make it so that you can laugh at your opponent after you kill them, but I and many other players use it all the time for things that you either aren't going to taunt someone for, aren't taunting someone for, or can't taunt someone for. I use it anytime I would want to laugh, whether that be at an opponent that I defeated, or at another player that I just think is doing something goofy. In those latter instances, Schadenfreude is no longer taunting anybody, so is it still a taunt, or is it just an emote? The difference of those two things, of course, being complete semantic nonsense. Much like how this entire argument is complete nonsense. And this might seem like a small issue, and it's really not even an issue at all, but to me this represents one of the many small layers of crap that Team Fortress 2 discussion is becoming. Team Fortress 2 is not degrading because of a lack of attention from Valve. Not that I think that that's helping, of course. It's degrading because the people who actually care about it, at least in my opinion, seem to be increasingly less inclined to talk back to the people that oftentimes don't even play this game and either way don't like it. The kind of people who want Team Fortress 2 to not be something that you enjoy because of how good of a game it is, but to be a battleground where we complain about things and masquerade behind the idea that we're saving Team Fortress 2 and returning it to how good it once was, even if in reality you're not. But I can't reveal too much about my next. I think it's important that we don't get complacent, and also that we be realistic about the things that we ask for and can do to make the game better, especially for the people that it actually needs to be better for, like new players. And these are things that will improve the game no matter what Valve does, whether they fix the game and start maintaining Team Fortress 2 more seriously, or if we wake up tomorrow and there's a Team Fortress 2 announcement, the servers have been cut down and we're left to fend for ourselves. And the backbone of these efforts are of course the community servers. You all already knew that. It's the not-so-secret sauce of any community-focused anything in this game, and I know that people aren't going to want to hear that you should just play on community servers, but I think there's more to community servers than just a place to play the game. They exist as a tool that we can use to build up our community, learn about our game, make stuff and test it that's really cool for it, and to communicate with Valve, as crazy as that sounds. The first thing I want to talk about is casual, because casual is a myth. It is a scam. Nobody actually likes it, and it was invented by Gabe Newell to fuel the suffering sphere he has on his desk. Now, of course, I'm not saying that people are lying necessarily, but of course, if you are and I find out, you will be forcing my hand to go to the county fair mirror maze and put up a shotgun trap. Like, clearly, people do like casual, at least evident by the player numbers, but I don't know if people actually like casual as much as they like the convenience that casual provides. Because first off, casual is not a good game mode in my opinion. Secondly, it falls prey to and exacerbates many of the problems that random queuing in general across the industry has. And C, I don't think that the fixation on it functioning is necessarily that good for the community. I have absolutely no idea what Valve was thinking when they made the Meet Your Match update. Or I guess more accurately, I have no idea what they were thinking when they changed how casual was formatted in Meet Your Match, and I have absolutely no clue why they thought it was a good idea to hit the button. This is one of the most iconically Valve solutions to a quote-unquote problem I've ever seen. A bunch of half measures that don't actually make anything better, and then ignorance. Trying to modernize Quickplay and to make it so that casual has more competitive integrity is not necessarily that bad of an idea, but making the casual mode more competitively minded and then not following through all the way is borderline idiocy. Not that many people want to play a skill-based best of 3, let's see who's better at the game Team Fortress 2 match, and all of the people who do want to play that don't want to play it 12v12 on Valve's archaic maps with random crits and random spread and no class limits. At the very least, 12v12 casual is not a good competitive format because it wasn't designed to be. It was designed to be fun for the most people it possibly could be. And of course it failed, but the thing is that there's a clear distinction in the kind of gameplay that different people want out of Team Fortress 2, especially for tryhards and casuals, two groups of players that generally have a hard time getting along. Turns out mashing a bunch of people who have conflicting views on how the game should be played maybe doesn't result in the best game of Team Fortress 2. And the fact that casual lacks so much direction and frankly so much identity outside of the fact that it has the big button is what makes it a completely useless tool for new players, because it doesn't get anybody into the kind of gameplay that they really want outside of whoever enjoys casual, I guess, and like many things in Team Fortress 2, it doesn't teach them anything. And I have a feeling that people don't really like this because every single time I play in casual casual, not only do I not have fun, no one around me has fun. Every single match, people are constantly filtering out the moment things don't go their way. It got so bad that Rich even hanged himself, and again, this is because you've got all these people who want so many different things out of Team Fortress 2 and you just threw them all together, resulting in, of course, very few people getting what they want out of the game and instead being mailed 400 pounds of celery. So then they start leaving the match to try to go find a different game, which also isn't going to give them what they want, causing the server to collapse. It's incredibly common to get into a game and to have one team just constantly bleed players until the match ends. A lot of people like to say that casual is where all the funny stuff happens and people go to just unwind and do silly things, but in my experience, this is not the case. I see far more not only just happier people, but more people doing stupid shit on something like Uncletopia than I do on casual. And no, chat, it's not because of the angel that hovers in the skybox and recites the name of all Scottish war dead, it's because it's not fun. It doesn't teach you anything because A, Team Fortress 2 does a terrible job of teaching new players anything, but casual especially so gives you no direction anywhere. Casual is supposed to be a low-stakes chaotic romp, but because of the changes to the format, especially making it so that the outcome is very dependent on your performance, because now you're playing best of 3 harvest winner takes all, you end up with a game mode that is not particularly casual because of how it's being formatted, and also not particularly competitive because it's still at its core 12v12 Team Fortress, with none of the rules that were established by the competitive community to make the game better for that style of gameplay. You guys ever think that the roots that curl around Angkor Wat kind of look like the extended fingers of some long-forgotten beast? Nah, I don't know, I just thought about that. Whether you're a new or a returning player, you don't really have any time to sink your teeth into the mode that you're trying to learn or play. I really don't know what they were thinking when they allowed you to specifically queue for certain maps, and then only let you play 2 rounds of that map. And if you're a new player, it's even worse, because Team Fortress 2 is not really that intuitive of a game. It does a lot to try to be, and a lot of its efforts are effective. But even so, Team Fortress 2 is just the kind of game where you're gonna have to play it once or twice to really understand what's going on, and that's not really a bad thing. You don't always need to be able to grasp what's going on in a game after the first 1 or 2 tries. But chat, I do think that by now you should have learned enough to dodge this grenade. In a game like Team Fortress 2, where you're gonna have to do a lot of practicing and learning to really get a grasp on it, it doesn't help to have the main mode only let you play the minimum number of rounds before it shoves you back into a completely different map and a completely different game mode or back to the menu. When you only have 2 or maybe 3 rounds to play on a map, especially on King of the Hill, and your team loses one, it's very justifiable to a lot of people at least to just leave the game. Especially those who are more focused on actually winning, because your team just lost half of the rounds you might be able to play. You have no more room to make mistakes, and trying to wrangle together 12 random internet strangers and get them to do anything is difficult enough. If I can't even get my team to band together and help me find the Minnesota Sea Serpent, how am I expected to get them to help me win the game? Especially given, again, that Team Fortress 2 is a game where there are a lot of different objectives that people have when they play it. Some people might want to win the game, some people might want to be friendlies and actively not win the game, and the selfishness of each player isn't helped by the matchmaking system. Every player knows that this match is only going to last 1 or 2 rounds, and after that, it's very unlikely that you're ever going to see any of these people again. So why bother trying to help them when you could just do what you want, and if the game isn't facilitating the kind of gameplay that you want, you could just go find another match. Again, especially considering how easy and how quick it is to get into a new match because of the big button. Add on top of that Team Fortress 2's tendencies to have roles, one-sided matches where one team from the get-go has a major advantage over the other just because of a difference in skill or a difference in intention, which a lot of people like to say is a map-dependent thing, and to a degree maybe, but no, Team Fortress 2 is simply a game where roles are very likely to happen, especially in 12v12 casual. Team Fortress 2 is a game where you can pick that guy. No, chat, not Chen Zhao, the true and final ruler of Guizhou province, I meant Medic. Medic is a character where you can look at the most valuable player on your team and give them either 3 times damage or invincibility. When you can give the best player on your team invincibility, you might be able to use that to your advantage to topple over the enemy team. Rolling causes people to leave, which causes auto-balancing, which causes people to leave. And that's why sometimes you join a game of casual and the map has been replaced by an infinite black desert populated only by a giant Sanskrit tablet. All of this combines to make it so that casual Team Fortress 2 is just very disposable, which kinda sucks, because Team Fortress 2 is a really good game. It deserves to be a game that you play a good match of. And of course now, whenever you talk about having a good match of Team Fortress 2, people are going to bring up this new Quickplay discussion, which is probably going to be a mainstay for quite a while. And I'll just be completely honest with you guys, I'll pull down the curtain for once. I am the guy who's been living in that derelict nuclear bunker at the end of your guys' street. I know I said I wouldn't, but I think it's important to realize that I came clean, but also I must have rewritten this segment of this video like 4 times. I brought up all kinds of topics, like how Quickplay servers used to be able to masquerade what they were so that you would connect to what you thought was a full server just for it to instantly be populated with bots. I talked about how there was a later version of Quickplay that fixed that for the most part. I even made this image to characterize people that I didn't agree with, but then I decided to take a step back for a moment. I wandered around my Zen garden for a while. I sat down, I shot the shit with the astral projection of Suleiman the Almighty, and I realized this is not really a topic. I don't really think there's much of an argument here, to be completely honest. I think almost everybody is pretty much in agreement with this. Maybe not everyone, but almost everybody to some degree can agree with each other. Firstly, that the people who actually want Valve to completely undo casual, whatever that even means, and reintroduce Quickplay as it was in 2016 or whatever, are being unrealistic. Valve has a very small team, if even that, dedicated to Team Fortress 2, all of the members of which would look a lot better to their coworkers, their company, and their bosses if they were working on any one of the other projects Valve is currently doing, for which they will get the same pay for much safer work that is more likely to get them advanced in the company. Nobody except Valve, and I would say probably not even Valve at this point, are truly aware of the extent of the invasiveness of pythons in the Florida Everglades, or are aware of how much of Quickplay is still functional. But even if it's mostly functional, however much work it is, it's just more work than what it would take to make casual more like what we liked about Quickplay. A lot of people have already gotten to the gun before me on this one, but a lot of the problems people have with casual could be fixed just by changing certain server variables, or could be fixed by changing basic server settings. Valve is simply not going to admit as a company or as developers that all the work they did on casual was a mistake, one which, even if you rectify it, isn't going to be appealing to all of the player base. For example, Zenith, another former Team Fortress 2 YouTuber who now makes videos on GameCube games, is somebody that I know for a fact is probably a Wendigo, but is also somebody who prefers matched play Team Fortress 2, which is not necessarily wrong. As you might be able to tell from this video, I don't like the way that casual does match play TF2, but the people who like it aren't wrong. And no Valve employee wants to go into the office one day and say, hey guys, remember that game that we didn't really need to touch and it was just gonna kinda do its own thing for us? Yeah, I went and I messed with it, and now a bunch of the player base is pissed off, and now I need a bunch of you guys to stop working on your projects that you care about, and that more importantly the executives care a lot about, and come help me fix this thing I did. Luckily, however, I think the people who actually believe that are going to be in the minority, which is great because that means that they are an ideological minority, not any other kind of minority. So it's morally acceptable for us to draw and quarter them using 3 cars in a parking lot. Now, that being said, if Valve wants to go the extra mile, I do think there are some things they could take from Quickplay that would be really great in casual. A better UI for finding community servers, as you can imagine, would be valuable to me. Or making it so that the end of match map vote doesn't take 5 times as long as finding a new match might keep people on the same server for a little while. So hopefully this won't be blown out of idiotic proportion. Except if I do it, then it's okay. Now, one last silly little topic. I just want to talk about this whole desk engineer thing that happened a while back. Frankly, this entire situation was a complete mess. I think I speak for everybody when I say that you can't just hide these kinds of definitely and highly politicized symbols in your cosmetics. The thing that separates Team Fortress 2 from the current slop in the games industry is the fact that it is one of the last true bastions of freedom of speech on the internet, which is exactly why we cannot allow this kind of artistic expression, and Valve was completely justified in removing it from the game. Hopefully these greedy community contributors learn a lesson from this. Don't try to hide your political views inside of your contributions. And that's all there is to say about this. Oh, but also, if you hide other stuff, that's totally okay, because, Easter eggs have been around for fucking as long as video games have been around, and people love them. They're so enjoyable and fun to see, so that's fine. But also, if you happen to include any of your political beliefs that aren't hidden, that's not acceptable either. Politics has no place in this game. Except for those times that the comics reference political figures like Abraham Lincoln, but that was just a silly joke. That's not like a symbol, you know? Okay, and sure, maybe there are a couple of different weapons that have political symbols on them, like the Iron Curtain, which is also named the Iron Curtain, and the Reserve Shooter, which has the US Army star on it, but nobody cares about any of these things. As we know, the USSR has absolutely no relevance on the modern day. And sure, maybe in the first 2 generations of Unusuals there was circling peace sign, which is a political symbol created by a political activist and graphic artist who was trying to show his support for denuclearization, which is currently still an issue, but you know. Now, for this final chapter, and yes, this video is finally concluding, let's assume Valve doesn't do any of this. Let's assume we're stuck with casual as it is for the foreseeable future, which again, I think is a pretty realistic outcome. What is the best thing we can really do to improve casual without having any access to the tools that we really need to do so? Because as it stands, all we really have is vote kicking, and vote kicking has a couple of flaws, because the Team Fortress 2 community is stupid. They would sooner vote to be fired out of a cannon into a brick wall than vote to get rid of an obvious cheater. And again, since this format is so disposable, a lot of people will sooner just find another game than bother vote kicking somebody. Which is why, again, I think we should be focusing our efforts on community servers, which in my opinion have a great number of advantages over casual. Unfortunately, however, they also have 2 major disadvantages that are more important than anything else. The great part of community servers is that anyone can make any server for anyone else. They can make any server with any format, playing any maps, with any game mode, using any plugins they want. You can have a server with no crits, with 24/7 crits, with instant respawn. You can play weird game modes like Pyro Volleyball and Class Wars, or play on weird maps like PL Financial Domination Playhouse. But this is also community servers' biggest weakness, and the reason that casual was made in the first place. Because the 2 things that casual does better than community servers, and probably always will, is convenience and consistency. Community servers might be great for getting any specific kind of gameplay that you want, and they are, but casual gets you good old-fashioned Team Fortress 2 exactly the way that grandma's underpaid African caregiver made at the click of a button, every time. And unfortunately, this is compounded by the fact that the TF2 community lives in the past and exclusively the past, and is unwilling in many cases to even try new things. You could make a fantastic change to the game, and the Team Fortress 2 community would spend an entire year beating each other over the head with YouTube sticks, fighting over whether or not it was a good idea. Like random shotgun spread versus fixed, which when turned off has almost no effect on most shotguns, except for the shortstop, in which case it makes the shortstop more fun. But even something like this is apparently such a major change that some people simply will not tolerate servers that don't have it on, even if it's actually a good change, and it is. But getting the Team Fortress 2 community to accept even minor changes like this one that are almost exclusively good is hard enough, let alone trying to get them to accept community servers as a valid alternative to casual. But just because something is difficult or is an uphill battle doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. Like, remember when you, me, Grakthar, and Thaynir all slayed the mother Ankheg that was ruining the town of Waterfoot? Like, yeah, no, I miss Thaynir too, man, yeah. You know, you never think it's going to be your party, right? You think you guys are invincible, but... So, even though we know that this is unlikely to work, what are the best things we can do for Team Fortress 2? And again, one of the best things I think we can do is to promote good community servers. And the best thing we can do to do that is to tackle the 2 main weaknesses that community servers have. The convenience of getting into a match, and the consistency of knowing that the one you're about to join is not crap. But how do we do this because the server browser is really bad? Well, that's where my 45-step plan comes in. But the better part is that some people have already done all the hard work for us. Current Reddit user but future Spanish High Command SaltyPeter3434 has created this fantastic spreadsheet detailing a huge number of community servers and providing a bunch of information about all of them. It is frankly a spectacular resource, even if it is a little bit ugly because it's a spreadsheet. It's a little bit disappointing to see that I'm the only person who's mentioned it as well. This makes finding servers that have properties that you like much easier, and frankly, this is a resource that should be spread around more. Another fantastic resource that you've probably heard of is Mastercom's Quickplay website. It's the community server arm of Quickplay in a website, brought to us by the Technomancer and Slug Farmer Mastercoms, the person behind Mastercomfig. And much like the spreadsheet, this has been largely ignored by the community, for reasons I totally don't know. Either way, this is a resource that is like 1,000 times more valuable than any amount amount of faffery that people are going to do about Quickplay in the next 2 months. And you can find links to both of these great resources in the description of this video, because these are the kinds of things that deserve to be shared around. And sharing around information about good community servers, again, is the best thing that you can do. Sure, casual is very convenient, and it is nice to have that convenience, and I'm sure it would be easy for Valve to make casual better. And if they do, I guess I'll have egg on my face, but until I see it in-game, I just don't trust Valve. And either way, one thing community servers do better than casual, and will probably always do better than casual, is provide an actual community. Random people matchmaking in almost any game I've played is functional at best, and at worst is kinda crap. And close-knit communities where you actually know the people you're playing against have always been superior. Whether you're a casual player who just wants to play the game with other people that you know enjoy the game, or are a competitive player who cares about the results of the match. Even the most competitively inclined communities out there don't like random queuing. Fighting games are arguably the most competitively minded genre in all of video games, because at least in 99% of cases, all a fighting game really is from a format perspective is two players playing against each other to see who wins. And even this community, which is heavily focused on who's better and making sure that their game has strong competitive integrity, don't like random matchmaking. In fact, fighting games are uniquely very good at community building, partially because they're not particularly popular, but also because of their history as a game that you play physically with other people at your locals, and also because you have that intimate 1v1 relationship with your opponent. And when you play a game like this with somebody that you know or somebody from your community, you at least know a few things about them. If they're a good actor, you know that they're not going to cheat. They're not going to try to manipulate the results of the match in any way by like kicking their router or something. And when two people fight each other for a match, they can establish intention. If you want serious matchup practice with another player that is at your skill level, you can at least to some degree guarantee that the other person is going to try. And of course, if they aren't honest about any of this, or they're a bad actor, or don't follow the honor system, you just don't have to play them. When you have a real community, that has actual consequences because much of the anonymity of a person is removed. Additionally, once you get to know people, you get to know them. And for the purposes of improving at the game, when you actually know somebody and you have a direct line of communication to them, you can not only start to learn how they play the game and make strategies against it, but also you can ask them for advice on how to improve and what it is you're doing wrong. Casual players benefit similarly from the same concept. When you have a place that is desirable to go to, specifically like a certain community server or a certain community, you create a place that people want to be, like for example, the chamber that crushes you under 17,000 pounds of water pressure. And when you have a place that people want to be at, generally speaking, they're not going to do things that compromise their ability to be there. And when you create a community like this, you've given every person on that server, for whatever reason, whether it be because the server is a very casual place, or a more try-hard oriented place, or it's for a certain YouTuber, or it has certain maps that you like, whatever it is, you give players something in common beyond just playing Team Fortress 2, which is why I believe I have an easier time getting people to be chatty on Uncletopia than I do on casual. Never mind the fact that of course some casual players can't talk, and those that do are just annoyed and bitter, like I said earlier. This is a phenomenon I see a lot of people in a lot of different games communities talk about, and this is a phenomenon that makes a lot of sense in my opinion. Not a lot of people talk on mic in a lot of different games, with a couple of different holdouts like Call of Duty, because frankly games have become incredibly popular, and as such have become very impersonal, and combined with the resurgence of what is effectively a chat room like Discord, I honestly don't blame anybody for not miking up anymore. Obviously it still does happen, but in my experience, smaller communities like community servers for any game or discords, but in a lot of games, open mic on random queue just kind of feels like going to, like a classic American burning 12,000 VHSs of the movie Red Dawn party, except you don't know anybody there and no one knows anybody there except maybe one or two people. And again, this extends beyond just who's willing to talk on their microphone. It goes to who's willing to make jokes with one another. And again, this extends beyond just the microphone. People on community servers are more likely to actually speak with one another, whether it's in text or not. They're willing to make jokes with one another, to tolerate and communicate with one another, and they're more likely to join auxiliary social media like forums or Twitter accounts or Discord servers again, and to form again an actual community. Whereas casual Team Fortress 2, I think I've added maybe one person that I've queued with, and then after I added them, I never talked to them again. Communities that own their own servers can obviously do all of the things Valve is either unwilling to to or can't. They can apply their own rules, they can ban whatever person or items or weapons or maps or whatever it is they want, and they can do whatever they feel is best for their game, curating anything they want to about their servers, the technology, the player base, or the game itself, whereas casual more than likely has nowhere to go but down, especially since, at least in my opinion, it seems like large elements of the Team Fortress 2 community are only getting more and more upset about increasingly small things about the game, while at the contrary, community servers across every single game that's ever existed have never once faltered. Community servers provide as many advantages today as they did when the technology started, I don't even know, in the 80s or whatever. And the best example of this is probably Team Fortress 2's own competitive community. This is a community that for a very long time had no real official support from Valve, even though they did have communication with some Valve members, but even so, while casual Team Fortress 2 was busy burning alive and complaining about Valve for 6 years, the competitive and even the non-competitive community server side of the game was fine. And frankly, whether or not casual works, I honestly don't care, because it sucks today the same way it sucked 6 years ago. So, where does all of this leave us? This video is kind of like the Odyssey, if the Odyssey was dog shit. But I have left you guys with a couple of useful resources, and I urge you to try to go out and give community servers a chance. You may not find the perfect one for you the first time around, but there is almost assuredly one for you. You just have to go find it. And I have to go find a better topic than this one, am I right? So I'll be getting out of here. And with all of this said, as I've said probably a dozen times, this video is over. I'm gonna go work on a good video. A video on a good topic, like talking about whether or not we should force Sniper to scope in for 86 minutes before he's allowed to fire the gun. And once again, I want to remind you guys to join me in Raid Shadow Legends, using the codes anywhere down there or with this QR code that's on the screen.